and welcome to Talks with Janette. I am so excited because today we're going to be talking to the queen of the court herself, Judy Murray, and I'm about to have my first ever tennis lesson. Woo! Judy, we're here. How will give you another hug? It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. But today, I think what we want to know more than anything is a bit more about you, because we all know you're Andy and Jamie's mom. You've been this incredible coach for them their whole lives. But what about you? Like, how did you get into tennis to begin with? Like, what was it that made you go, I think I want to play tennis?
Well, I started playing tennis when I was about 10, and back then, which was many years ago, you really had to be about 10 or 11 because the rackets were wooden and they were long and the court was huge. So you really couldn't get started much before that because you simply weren't big enough or strong enough. Nowadays you can start at 4 or 5, you know, with little mini rackets and sponge balls and badminton-sized courts. But I learned to play with my mum and dad to start off with, and then just from the other kids and the other adults at our club. So it was never about coaching. There was no coaches in Scotland in those days. Tennis is very much a minority sport. So yeah, learned very generically and naturally through my family.
Through your family. So do you remember the moment you first saw a tennis match and went, ooh, I think I like that? Or
I don't really remember that. What I do remember was Wimbledon on the television, and for 2 weeks of the year never getting fed. You know, like my mum would just be glued to it. She'd be sat on the sofa and it would be like, Mum, we're hungry. Fridge. You know, she'd just point you to the fridge and she just literally wouldn't move, and she'd sit there and commentate on all the matches like she was an absolute expert. And many years later, I would realise that she had no idea.
She had no idea. And your dad was a footballer. So do you think your dad being a footballer maybe gave you a push to play sports as well? Or
I think my mum and dad being sporty, definitely for me and my 2 younger brothers. They played actively with us all the time in the garden. We had you know, badminton over the washing line, and we had cricket stumps, and we had homemade football goals, and obviously it was tennis at the tennis club and everything. But I think, you know, what my mum and dad did with us was they wanted us to enjoy sport because they enjoy sport. So when I had Jamie and Andy, it was pretty much second nature for me just to do the same things with my kids.
Oh wow! And now you've won 64 titles, is it, that you won when you played?
Yeah, but you know, it sounds like it's something quite good, but I think you have to put it into the context of tennis being very much a minority sport in Scotland. And you know, when I was young, you played tennis in the summer and badminton in the winter because there was no indoor courts. There was no coaches, like I already said. So it was only a very small pool of people who played competitive tennis. So it might sound quite good, but it probably wasn't.
But own it, Judy. I would say
Yeah,
it.
should really.
64. Yeah, that's me. I've won them all.
Now I'm almost that age.
And now, so tell me a little bit more then. So you started playing when you were 10, and your mom and dad were obviously a massive influence, and then you started playing. And now, how did you go from playing to actually coaching? Because they're quite different things, aren't they?
Yeah, very different. I think, you know, when I was in school, all through my high school years, I thought I would be a PE teacher. And then I was persuaded to go to university and do languages because at that time the teaching profession was in a bit of a disarray and there wasn't many jobs. So several years later, after I moved back from Glasgow to Dunblane, just before Andy was born, Jamie's 15 months older than Andy, moved back to Dunblane to be closer to my mum and dad to help out with the kids. And was desperate to get some exercise and get out of the house. Kids were driving me nuts. Given up my job. Job came with a car. I was a sales rep at that time. So I rejoined the tennis club that I'd been a member of since I was little. Discovered there was still no coaches and nobody doing anything for the kids. So I started to did a couple of hours a week when my mum could watch Jamie and Andy. And that was really how I got started. A couple of hours a week, and then as it expanded, I discovered I loved teaching almost as much as I loved playing. And as more and more parents asked me to do things with their kids, I started to trade tennis sessions for childcare. Don't judge me. But really, you know, we had no money. And so I was doing it all voluntarily, and that was really how I got started. So the mums and dads had to look after Jamie and Andy and the clubhouse and the park that was next door to the club. So they kind of grew up around the tennis club from when they were little, so they probably had no chance.
They were going to play tennis no matter what. That's so interesting. So I remember reading about you, and you were quite quick on the court, it said, but that you've always had a knack for really understanding the game. So when you were playing, did you feel like that was a huge advantage for you as a player, that you understood the game so well?
Yeah, I think because I learned from my parents, my dad in particular, My dad thinks he invented topspin, by the way. He thinks he was hitting topspin before Bjorn Borg was. But my mum and dad weren't coaches, so they taught me how to play the game. So tactically, how you make things difficult for your opponent.
I see.
And my dad had all these spins and slices and drop shots and things. He was a nightmare to play against. But I learned so much from copying what he did. So if he made it difficult for me, I could make it difficult for him by trying to do the same thing. So I learned how to play the game without learning how to hit the ball, if you know what I mean.
Yes, of course, because you had to be quite tactical then, more than...
Very much so. And like nowadays, when there's so much coaching around, I'd say more people than ever before have coaching and less people than ever before play the game competitively, because kids get programmed into activities from such a young age.
Yes.
That they often, you know, they do tennis one night, then they do swimming, then they do drama.
Yeah, they do lots of different things. Yeah.
And if you don't practice things in between time, you don't get very good at anything. So the fun for me of sport is the competition. So that whole thing of how do I disadvantage you down there? How do I make it difficult for you down there? For me, that's the
competitive edge. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you're talking a lot about coaching kids, and I know that you work with a lot of different charities. Like for example, She Rallies, the Miss Hits, and you also do the tennis on the road.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot for charity. How important is it to you that kids do play sports? Is that something you're very passionate about?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really worries me. I think in Scotland we are apparently one of the most obese nations, particularly for children. And I hate that because, you know, I grew up loving being outdoors, loving running around, loving playing
lots of sports. Yeah.
And so this whole thing for me is about getting kids off the couch
and being active.
And being active. You know, we want to be a more healthy nation, but I also realise all the things that I learned from playing sport, you know, from discipline and routine to leadership to communication, organisation, confidence.
They're all quite teamwork. You use in everyday life as well.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
So I'm just a huge believer in it. So a lot of the programmes that I've drawn up, of course they're for getting children active, but they're actually more about building a workforce and showing people how to teach tennis or developing physical skills in kids by making it fun and stimulating. Because I believe if you have a bigger and stronger workforce around the country, whether that's a parent workforce or teachers or volunteers at your local club or youth leaders, you know, they will create more activity for kids. You need people to create the activity. So for me, it's more about investing in
people as humans as well, not just as sports.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And you won an OBE. You are an OBE. I saw Prince William handing it over to you. Were you nervous?
I was okay until I got to the bit where I thought I have to curtsy. And you know how rubbish I am in heels, because when I really struggle.
I don't think you're rubbish. But
and I thought, what if my heels get stuck in the carpet? What if I fall over? Because they record the whole thing, and it was those few moments of, I could fall here. I could fall at his feet.
Yeah, you could fall at the future king's feet.
Exactly.
The congratulations, by the way, because that's such an amazing thing. And you won it for the charity work that you've done, for the service that you've done to tennis. But you're also a big advocate about women in sports. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I am. I think about 6 or 7 years ago now, I got the chance to be the captain of the Fed Cup team, which is the British women's team. And it was a huge thing for me because I think for many years since I stopped being the Scottish national coach, in those sort of intervening 10 years where I really dedicated my time to helping Jamie and Andy in their careers, I'd largely ceased to be recognised as a coach. I just was Jamie and Andy's mom.
Jamie and Andy's mom.
And then suddenly I was offered this opportunity, and it was a big thing for me because it gave me a lot of confidence that somebody was recognising that I was a good coach. So, but as I got into the women's side of the game, I realised very early on, first WTA tournament that I went to in New Zealand, there's just no women coaches. It's all male coaches, virtually, on the women's tour. And once you start to notice something like that, you see it everywhere you look. And, you know, I started to sort of drill down back in the UK of how do we become a stronger women's tennis nation in Great Britain. And discovered things like, you know, 4 times as many boys coming into the game at entry level. 85% of our coaches are men, and I'm thinking there's a correlation there. We need more female coaches to create a better balance, but also for the retention of girls in the game. You know, all sports lose girls in the teenage years.
For them to stay.
You need role models. You need role models to show that coaching a sport can be a career. that you need women think and act on behalf of women and girls.
Yes.
Because we are them.
Because we are them.
So we need that around, because if you don't understand what girls are going through those high school years, emotionally and physically, all the changes that are happening to your body, you need to understand what's going on, so you can create the right environment, the right communication, the right context, sometimes even the right equipment, to make it a fun and stimulating place to retain girls in what they're doing. So huge believer in growing a bigger and stronger female workforce, and that's really what I've been doing with BLT on the She Rallies program, and started to do some work with the WTA on a more global program to increase the number of female tennis coaches in order to get more girls playing.
Just to get more girls in. We want girl power. Now this is a big year for women, isn't it? It's the 100th anniversary of women voting in the UK. So things like She Rallies and what you're doing are so important, I think, for the times now. And do you find that it was very difficult for you then? Because when you started playing, it was very different times to now. It must have been hard to be a woman in such a male-dominated sport, was it?
I think that when I started coaching at the club, because there were no full-time coaches in Scotland at that time, tennis coaching wasn't a career. You couldn't play all year round because there weren't indoor courts. So if you can't play all year round, you can't coach all year round. So nobody ever saw tennis coaching as a career.
As a career,
And so I think that when I started out, I was really kind of almost like forging a path. That sounds a bit naff. You know what I mean? It's like nobody else was doing it.
Yeah, but you were kind of like the pioneer, weren't you, of women in coaching?
Starting off, and because you're not competing with anybody, because nobody else is doing it, I never had any problem. You know, it was just like, just keep going. I think it was more when I sort of expanded down south and overseas that you notice, actually there's hardly any female coaches around. And you're very much in a minority. And the last coaching qualification that I did, which was way back in 1995, and it was a 12-month course. Called the Performance Coach Award, and I was the first woman.
You were the first woman to win it,
But, you know, there was 20 people on the course, and there was 18 of them were men, and 2 were women. And
so the numbers are very skewed, aren't they?
Very skewed, and it still is like that. But that was a very intimidating place for me to be, because the other 19 people on that course were all full-time coaches based down south. And many of them were real good ex-players. So I felt very out of my depth, and I don't forget what that felt like. So this whole thing of creating a network of female coaches, and the She Rallies program is just about female coaches, bring them all together. And there's no egos in female coaches. People network, they share better.
It's about the sport, isn't it? It's about getting more girls to play, and passionate.
And you're relaxed, and everybody's there because they want to be there, not because they're trying to earn loads of money or create a big name for themselves. So that's been a huge part of my life the last year and a half, building this.
Building up She Rallies, as you're wearing today. Now, we cannot not mention Strictly Come Dancing. Did you enjoy your time on the show? Tell me a bit about that.
Oh yeah, I had the best time. It was, you know, it's one of those things, I've always been a Strictly fan, absolutely love it. And when they asked me if I'd like to be part of it, I could not believe that they'd asked me. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, I'll need to run it past Jamie and Andy. And so, you know, I said to Jamie first, and he said, oh man, you love Strictly, that'll be great fun, go on, yes. And Andy went, oh my God, you'll be rubbish.
Oh wow.
And actually they were both right, because I did love it and I was rubbish. But, you know, it was honestly one of the best moments of my life, having that sort of 3 or 4 months. Made so many great friends from it. You know, Anton in particular, he was so patient with me because I was so useless. There's that whole thing of, you know, I think learning a brand new skill at 55 was such a difficult thing. I just couldn't remember anything.
But you know what, for me, watching you every week and seeing you backstage and being around you in the studio, you do know what, I never noticed that it was difficult for you. You always had a smile on your face. You really loved it. No matter what Craig said to you, you smiled at it. So I think you really enjoyed yourself, and that came across when you danced.
I definitely did. I really had a great time, and for me doing it was all about the fun. I wasn't doing it for any other reason. So I just did. I loved every
And was there a part of you that thought, well, I want people to see a different side of me? Because as you said, everybody knew you as Andy and Jamie's mom, and you're this very intense and amazing sports coach, and you do so much for women in sport. Did you think that you wanted people to see a different side to you on Strictly? Is that something you had?
No, I didn't think about that at the time that I said that I would do it. I think I realised that as the show went on, and I stayed in it for quite a few weeks. And when you stay in it for a number of weeks, you really get into it, and you relax a little bit more into it. I think that what I did realise was that obviously because the marks every week were very rubbish, and we were always in the bottom 2 or 3, and every week when you're up in the auditorium and they're talking about leaderboard, every single week Anton would nudge me and he'd go, "They got it upside down again, partner." You know, and it was just like, you know, that sort of fun side of it. But you realise that the public are voting for you, and that's what's keeping you out of the dance hall. And that was a lovely thing for me, because for many years I was smashed up by the media as being a pushy mum, and she never smiles, and nothing like that.
You're not like that at all, is it?
In retrospect, it helped me a lot, because now there are so many more people who are interested in what I do. Away from that, because of being on Strictly.
And also now for all of your charity work and getting more women involved in the sport, being on a show like Strictly Come Dancing would definitely give you a different platform and different people to touch.
No question. And as you say, it just allows people to see a completely
different
sides.
Side of you. And were you scared when Craig judged you the first time? Was that something that you were like, oh gosh, or were you ready for him?
No, I think, you know, when you're a fan of the show, you know what Craig's going to be like. He has his pantomime persona, and you expect him to be foul to everybody. So if he'd been nice to me, I would have been worried. So I was like, bring it on. You
bring
know,
it on.
It never bothered me what any of them
Almost like the harsher he was, the better.
I always say to people, I knew I was rubbish. I didn't need them to tell me I was rubbish.
Oh my gosh. Well, I loved watching you every week. Really, Cruella de Vil is probably still one of my favorite moments. And I think you got all the way to Blackpool. I mean, that's amazing.
That was such a great experience. Imagine dancing with Anton Dubek in the Blackpool Ballroom. Whoever would have thought that?
And you said you had an incredible time with Anton, didn't you? He was quite funny in the room, and the hours went on, I bet, and you didn't even feel it.
No, he was really great. And what I loved about him was that, you know, he dressed everything up with humour. So he could allude to what I perhaps wasn't doing right without saying, no, you've done that wrong. He never ever said that. He never ever made me feel like I was doing really
something
poorly, because he just made everything about the... You know,
he adored you. He always spoke so highly about you. So what did you feel like? I mean, you were thrust into the spotlight with no preparation. I mean, that must have been quite scary. How did you feel about that?
Well, I think in 2005, when Andy got to Wimbledon on a wild card, basically means he was about 350 in the world, so his ranking wouldn't get him in. So he was given a wild card spot, and suddenly he won his first match. Then he won his second match, and then he was on the centre court playing against David Nalbandian, who was the world number 4. And what you realise about tennis is there's 20 seconds between points, there's 90 seconds between the changeovers, and at Wimbledon, because it's covered by the BBC, there's no ad breaks. So the cameras and the commentators are looking for things to talk about. So although Andy's brand new on the court, we were all brand new in the player box, and you suddenly find yourself being picked out. And you don't realise the cameras are on you at the time, but when you read the papers the next day or you watch the highlights at night, and you're going, oh
wow,
And nobody prepares you for that. Nobody prepares you for people doorstepping you, or paparazzi outside the little flat that you're staying in, or, you know, catching you on the stairs going out of the match, and pictures of you in the paper looking up. You know, they always picked all that stuff of me, and the media definitely, from that moment on, they painted a picture of me as being like pushy mum, aggressive, all this sort of stuff, and that's hard to deal with when you know that's not you at all.
That's not what you are.
But that player box is a stressful place to be. You're not sitting there smiling and chatting to your friends.
Not,
You're focusing on what your kids are doing, the way you always have all their life when you've been there to support them. So it was a difficult few years for me, and yes, as I say, you know, I don't retaliate on it. I didn't do any interviews. I just let it go, and you just have to put the blinkers on and get on with it. But it's not easy reading stuff about yourself that's written by people that you've never met.
And when they don't know you.
They don't know anything about you.
But I guess that's what was the nice thing about Strictly. People did get to know you, really know you. And then talking on Strictly again, was it interesting, because you've been so used to coaching and being the one kind of leading, let's say, a lesson. Was it interesting for you to become the student for a change?
Yeah, it actually was, because, you know, it was the first time that I'd learned anything new. I think probably since I was at university, when I learned how to play squash, which is actually quite similar to tennis anyway. But I found it quite interesting when I was looking at how I learned, and it probably the hardest thing for me, I think, was just retaining the information because everything
Yeah.
was so new.
There's a lot of
I thought I would be better at it because I played sport and I'm pretty well coordinated. But actually, the thing about sport is it's very instinctive. The ball's there and you run for it, you go for it, and whatever.
Yes.
And with the dancing, everything is a set routine, so you have to remember the patterns and the sequences.
So much more of a memory thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you hit 50, your memory goes to pot anyway. So I found that really
Interesting,
really difficult. But
yeah.
what I loved about Anton was how he dressed everything with humour.
Yes.
He never made me feel like I couldn't do something. He always just he would make some kind of joke about something, and I would get it. I would go, I know what he's trying to tell me there, but it was just fun.
So you didn't feel like you were a student so much. You were learning, but you felt quite relaxed learning as well.
Yeah,
He made
I
it
did,
nice for you.
because he made it so much fun for me.
And so, okay, so you've done Strictly, but then you came back, didn't you?
Did,
You
yeah,
came back for the
did.
Christmas special.
did.
Did you enjoy doing that?
I really did enjoy doing that, and I think when they asked me to do that, I thought, oh, yeah,
You're back.
I'd love to go back. I'd love to go back and see everybody again and have another go at that. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, when they said to me, you're going to do the Charleston, I went,
Yes.
no heels.
Yeah, amazing. So,
So,
you're like flat feet. Did you enjoy the Charleston?
I really did enjoy it because it's that whole thing of, you know, the funny faces.
The funny
and
faces,
you
yeah.
Can get into it and I thought, great, no heels. And then I thought, oh God, it's all rhythm and time, and it's quite fast, which is never my strong point, as you know. And yeah, and then they said to me that I was going to be dancing with Neil Jones.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know Neil.
Yeah.
And but actually, from the first moment that I met him, he's such a great teacher.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant dancer, and he made it so much fun as well. And I think maybe having done the Strictly show in 2014, maybe I was a little bit more relaxed.
Going into
but
it.
I learned it better. I think maybe because I was more relaxed.
More
just
relaxed, yeah.
slightly different
And because
teaching
it's
style.
Christmas, it has less of a competitive edge, yeah.
Yeah.
But you smashed the Charleston, high
Oh,
five, I
yeah,
was
it
there.
was
You was
decent, it was
the
decent.
heels, no heels worked for you.
I wanted to do the swivel because I never really remembered much about the judges' comments, but I remember doing the Charleston with Anton and Craig saying to me, "Not an ounce of swivel, darling."
Darling,
And
yes.
I've got to do that swivel. I've got to get.
You've got to get it, yeah. And so now you've just released your book, Knowing the Score, and I've been reading a little bit about it, but there's one quote that you say that I have to ask you about, and it's, you said, I knew I looked at tennis differently when I put my tennis ball in the tumble dryer. Tell me about that. What was that story?
You know, it's just one of those things that when I started coaching at the club, and like I said, I was doing it as a volunteer, and we had no money back then. So actually, our courts at Dunblane Tennis Club were artificial grass. So it's a bit like playing on a carpet. And because the weather is so bad in Scotland, the carpet is always wet. And so the moisture comes off on the tennis balls. The tennis balls get heavy, they get fluffy, they kind of expand, and they're much harder to hit. They don't bounce very high. They're a nightmare. So I had to find ways to rescue the tennis balls because I couldn't keep buying new ones. And I discovered the tumble dryer.
It's the secret.
It's the way to go. And then if you take a hairbrush and you take all the fluffy bits off,
Wow.
you can actually save them
So
for
the
longer.
tennis ball is a shrine for you almost, isn't it? It's so
It is a little
special.
bit, but you know, so much of what I learned as a coach and as a parent was born out of necessity.
Yes.
You know, I have to do this because I can't afford to go to the sports shop and buy 48 new tennis balls. So,
Oh my
there we
gosh!
go.
So tell me about your book. It's called Knowing the Score, and what is it? The story of your life? Is it? What is it? How does it?
It's a kind of memoir of I suppose, the tennis journey that I went on with the boys. So it kind of starts with my background in tennis, and then it goes through learning to coach at the local club, and then growing out from the club into our local area, which is about 14 clubs in it. So trying to create opportunities for kids to play tennis all year round, to grow a coaching workforce and a parent workforce, and then becoming the Scottish national coach and creating opportunities for the Scottish kids to play internationally and grow a workforce with that. So I never would have imagined when I started volunteering at Dunblane Tennis Club
That it would
we'd
lead.
end up where we've ended up, never in a month of Sundays. But I think it's that sharing all the things I had to learn and experience as a parent, a coach and a woman in a man's world with anybody who
Any
wants to
particular,
hear it.
yeah. Now, Andy, let's talk a little bit about Andy and Jamie. When you watch them play, how are you feeling? Do you get nervous? Do you get excited? Are you quite calm? I mean, how do you feel when you watch them? Because as a mom and coach, I guess it's two very like.
Yeah, I think when they were younger and they were just kids enjoying what they were doing and I think it helped me a lot that I was a coach and a mum. I think that in any individual sport, the onus is very much on the parents to make things happen for their kids.
Yes.
And tennis is one of those sports where you get much more parental involvement than if my kids had gone into a team sport, for example. And I think it always helped me that I could watch them playing and have an eye on what can I help them to improve, rather than the outcome of the match, whether they're winning or losing. I never really got caught up in that. And I think many parents get over emotionally invested in the outcome
and versus the whole process,
rather than well, actually, okay, so you're struggling with that, but I can help you with that next week or whatever. I think it really helped me, and I always enjoyed that because we were just learning. It was like a big adventure for us. We had no idea where we were going, none whatsoever. But now, the last few years, I think when they've both got right up to the top of the game, and there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of pressure from the public, from the media, from themselves as well. And I haven't enjoyed it so much going to watch. I
Really?
describe it as a mixture of heart attack and severe nausea.
Oh my
all going on at the
gosh!
same time.
Please
so
no.
That's what I look like.
It's so stern.
Totally.
So it's a mixture, you said, of a heart attack.
And severe nausea all at the same time. I don't advocate it to anyone, and I'm really surprised I'm still alive.
Wow. So you definitely still watch as many of the games as you can.
I don't go very often now.
Oh really?
And I never watch on telly.
Don't watch on telly. Is there?
The commentators drive me nuts. So I just the last match I watched on the TV was the 2016 Olympic final, and I watched 3 games before I turned the sound off.
You turned the sound off. Wow.
And I watched it, and it was torture, but it was such a big thing, and Andy was, it was in Brazil, and I just felt like I had to be sitting there in the middle of the night with him.
Nah. I guess, I never even thought about that. You would have your own thoughts and opinions on the game, so the commentators would definitely get in the way of that.
Switch off.
And so I have to ask you again, Strictly Come Dancing, knowing the score, obviously all the coaching and all the charity work that you're doing, you've got an OBE now. So if none of that would have happened, if tennis wouldn't have been a part of your life, do you know what your plan B would have been? What would have been the other side of Judy if the tennis didn't take off?
I don't really know. I think, like I said, when I was at school, I always thought I'd be a PE teacher because sport was such a big part of my life. There isn't really anything that I have fancied doing. Now, at this stage of my life, I've done so much tennis and I won't go on forever. But I think I'd quite like to learn how to cook.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do tins of things and
Okay.
ready meals and stuff.
Do
and
you?
I think I'd like to know. I've never had time really to address the whole cooking thing. My life is so active and so busy, and never in one place long enough. No routine to it. And I think that's one of my things I'd quite like to.
Would you bake, or did you? What would you have liked to do? Baking, cooking? Or?
I think cooking. And
Cooking.
I am a bit of a cakeist. I do like my desserts and my cakes, but I think I just like the whole Italian cooking, sauces, pastas. I think
Master Chef Judy Murray.
I could go in and write that.
Yeah, amazing. Actually, your mom, Eileen, she does the most amazing shortbread, doesn't she? And you always used to bring it to us on the show, and I remember going, oh my God, Judy, that means we've got shortbread coming up.
I think that was another of the reasons perhaps that I kept coming back, because the shortbread was, but actually, my mom is she's a great baker and a great cook. She was at Domestic Science College.
Oh, wow.
So she's nailed all that
She
stuff.
definitely nailed the shortbread.
And she hasn't passed on any of those talents to me, unfortunately, but the shortbread has become quite world famous.
Okay, no, it really is. And I remember them, looking forward to them every weekend very much. When you left after Blackpool, there was a little bit of sadness in the group.
The sugar level.
The sugar level went down after you left. Oh my! So I have an idea. I'm going to give you my mom's recipe for pollo a la plancha. Do you know what that is?
No.
Pollo a la plancha is like the most traditional Cuban meal. Right. So if I give you that, you give me your mom's shortbread, and then you can try your Master Chef with the Cuban meal.
That's a deal.
Deal? High five. Okay. So I know you said that we're not going to be doing any kind of tennis, but I did come dressed for the part.
I know.
Right?
What are you doing?
So I have an idea, and you tell me what you think. But how about a match of table tennis?
I love it.
Yeah. It's not a tennis ball, but it's a little. So let's see if we can set it up really quick, okay?
Yeah.
And we'll play one match, and you can give me some pointers.
That sounds good.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Judy, Top tips. This is the Wimbledon final right now for me. What would you say are the top tips for me to be a good player?
Here's my top tip.
Top tip.
There is more space above the net than below it, so hit the ball up.
Ooh, good to know.
That'll be 50 grand.
I'll send you a check. Okay, so do you start? Do I start? How does it work?
Well, normally you would, you know, if you're playing in a major competition, the umpire would flip a coin.
Flip a coin.
You'd do heads or tails who's going to start. But I'd say since you've got the ball in the bat, you can start. And what you're supposed to do is to try to get it over the net and make it bounce on my side. But we haven't got much space, so remember, you're just going to bump it up.
There's more space over the net.
Yes. So just hit it up.
Hit it up. Do I need to hit it on the table first?
You can bounce it, or you can hit it out of your hands.
Okay,
whatever
ready?
you like.
Should we get a 3, 2, 1? Is that good or bad?
That's unbelievable.
That's
You nearly
unbelievable.
knocked me out.
You said space. Try again. 3. I'll go softer. 3, 2.
Oh yes, yes.
Ah! Does that mean I get it? I win. You know what? I'm gonna give myself this. Thank you so much, Judy Murray.
Well done.
I'm
First
amazed.
title.
First title.
So easy.
You see? My first of hopefully 64. Thank you so much for today.
you're welcome.
I love
So
your
much
story. You are brilliant. Thank you for all that you do, not just for sports, but for women and for kids. And just for taking the time to talk with me.
It's a pleasure.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Boom.